A luxurious mansion in Beverly Hills, nestled in lush, manicured gardens, lived its unhurried life until a flurry of preparations for a dinner party began within its walls. Emma, in a neat apron and rubber gloves, stood on a second-floor windowsill trying to wash the tall window to a perfect shine. White, fragrant foam slid down, and she collected it with a brush into a bucket. Suddenly, a sharp voice, like the crack of a whip, came from behind. "Who taught you to wash windows?" The maid flinched and, turning around, saw the old butler, Mr. Henderson. His arrogant, thin profile with an aquiline nose stood out with its paleness against the dark room. He extended a hand in a white glove to the window and ran his finger across the freshly washed glass, then looked at his finger and grimaced in disgust. "Wipe it better. I order you. There should be no streaks," he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Don't spare yourself, girl. You're here to make this house shine." Emma swallowed, feeling fear grip her. She nodded silently. "I'll be back in 10 minutes, and if any spot is left unwashed, you'll have only yourself to blame." When he finally left, Emma let out a shaky breath. She knew that losing her job would be a catastrophe. She had sought this position for so long, miraculously passing the rigorous selection process. Of course, she had heard about the strict rules here, but the decent pay outweighed all hardships, and she was ready to endure anything just to keep her job. Emma began to wash the outer pane of the window with even greater diligence. She stretched with her brush to the far corner and couldn't quite reach it. She took a deep breath and, standing on your tiptoes, reached her coveted goal. The wet windowsill was treacherously slippery. Her foot slipped, and Emma, falling from the ledge, plummeted down. The bucket of soapy water followed her. Her heart pounded, and time seemed to slow down. The last moments of her life flashed through her mind. A small apartment somewhere in East Los Angeles, where her brother was struggling with his homework, and her mother, pale and exhausted, was coughing as she struggled to get out of bed. As if in a waking dream, Emma saw their faces, frightened, beloved, and only one thought pierced her consciousness. It's all over now. She knew that below, decorative stones with sharp edges adorned the flowery lawn. She gasped, bracing for the impact for the pain, but instead, she landed with a thud on something soft, and then the bucket of soapy water crashed down on her, drenching her with water. Emma curled up and squeezed her eyes shut. Opening one eye, then the other, she found herself in the back seat of a convertible. Looking up, she saw the astonished face of Matthew, the young master of the house, who was staring at her, wet and terrified, with his mouth agape. "Did you fall from the sky?" the young, wealthy man asked. It was clear he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Who are you, anyway?" I'm Emma," she whispered, trying to sit up. "I work for you." "What, Emma?" Matthew frowned. "I've never seen you before." "I've only been here for 2 days," she began. But then Matthew was distracted by the sound of the front door opening. His father, Mr. Davenport, stepped out onto the porch, stretched, and immediately saw the convertible on the lawn, and his face contorted in a grimace. "Son, have some respect for other people's work. Who parks like that? You've driven onto the lawn and den and crotched all the flowers." "Oh, come on, Dad. Wave your hand," trying to smooth things over. "I just got carried away and misjudged." "Be more serious, my boy. If you can't drive, hire an instructor. Take driving lessons, but I won't tolerate this anymore," his father said. His gaze fell on Emma in the car. "And who is this?" He raised his eyebrows. "Are you fooling around with the maids? Have you completely lost your mind?" Emma curled into a ball, feeling her world crumble. This was the end. But suddenly Matthew smiled innocently and exclaimed, "Dad, what are you talking about? Don't insult my future fiancée. And I were just heading to a club for a party. Just a regular costume party."
A party? His father squinted suspiciously. Don't forget about your mother's birthday. There's a dinner party tonight. The guests will be arriving, so you both need to be here, and sharp. You're my heir, and I'm asking you. Now I'm demanding that you be dressed to the nines, and that your girlfriend doesn't look like a drenched maid. Don't you dare embarrass me in front of everyone. All right, Dad, relax. I get it. Matthew started the engine, and the convertible, kicking up dirt from the lawn, pulled onto the driveway. Emma saw his father shake his head and showed after them, "What a scamp! Just you try to embarrass me, son." Ignoring his father's disgruntled shout, Matthew floored the gas pedal. The convertible shot forward, leaving a cloud of exhaust behind. Emma pressed herself into the seat, her heart pounding wildly. She was sure that he would just drop her off somewhere on the road, fire her, and forget about her. But Matthew drove out of the mansion gates and after 100 yards slowed down.
Stopping in the shade of sprawling trees, he turned abruptly to Emma and, smiling, said, "Breathe. Everything's gonna be okay. You're not hurt, are you?" "No, I'm fine," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you had to listen to that." His voice was soft and sympathetic. "My father, is obsessed with etiquette and our family's reputation. He doesn't like me racing around and all of that. And then there's you." Matthew looked thoughtfully into the distance. "Listen," he began, less confidently. "I was just thinking, you heard what my father said. He wanted me to be serious. I'm tired of his constant control, and this evening is, well, to put it simply, my last chance to convince him that I can be a worthy heir. So I already told my father it was awkward. Can you play my fiancée for just one evening?" Emma stared at him wide-eyed. Her thoughts were a jumble. She thought that this was just a crazy idea of a rich boy who wouldn't care about her tomorrow. And what about her job? "What is this?" she breathed. "Some kind of stupid game?" Matthew pressed his lips together for a moment, then laughed. "Well, tell me. What do you want?" he asked with a slight smile. "You're so scared. Let's do this. You tell me what you need to be happy, and I'll solve all your problems. Think about it. Just one evening in a gorgeous dress, and you'll get everything you wish for. It's every girl's dream." Emma shook her head, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. "For you rich people, everything is a game," she said, choking on her resentment. "And then you'll throw me out like a stray dog." "No one is going to throw you out, I give you my word," he said, now serious. "And for you, this is a chance. So, what do you need?" Emma, who was constantly thinking about her mother and brothers, suddenly made up her mind. "My mother, she needs treatment, very expensive. And my brother needs help. He's struggling in school." Matthew looked at her, his smile fading. His eyes reflected understanding and compassion. "Okay," he said, nodding. "I'll give you money for your mother's treatment, and we'll hire a tutor for your brother. But why aren't you asking for anything for yourself?" He looked somewhat surprised. "I see you still don't believe me. Tell me, how can I convince you? I may be a loafer, as my father thinks, but I'm not a liar." "A written promise," Emma said quietly. "Give me a written promise that you won't deceive me." Matthew laughed. "Okay." He took a pen and a checkbook from the glove compartment. Opening it, he tore out one of the checks, scrawled his signature on it, and handed it to her. "Cash it when this is all over. For now, just keep it." Emma nodded, took the check, and for the first time that day, a timid smile appeared on her face. "Thank you," she whispered. Matthew started the car and handed her a pack of disposable tissues from the glove compartment. "You're all wet," he said, and Emma noticed that he was barely holding back a smile. His gaze lingered on her figure, and at that moment she realized that her wet dress was clinging to her, accentuating every curve. A blush of shame crept up her cheeks, and she quickly grabbed the tissues and turned away. Matthew chuckled. "All right, let's go then." By the time they reached downtown Los Angeles, the sun had dried both Emma's dress and her hair. Matthew took her to a small, cozy cafe,
"Let's get a bite to eat first," he suggested, gallantly opening the door for her. "You're probably hungry." Emma nodded shyly. Sitting at the table, she studied Matthew. His free and free-hearted demeanor gradually put her at ease. She watched as he habitually ordered coffee and a couple of desserts. How easily and naturally he interacted with the waiter. It was all so natural for him. "You know, you really do look like a fairy," he said suddenly, admiring her. "A fairy?" Emma laughed. "More like a wet crow." No, Matthew objected. "Crows don't fall into convertibles." After lunch, they went to a boutique on Rodeo Drive. Inside was a world of silk dresses, sparkling jewelry, and expensive shoes. It was all like something from another world. Emma wandered through the store in a daze, not knowing what to choose. Matthew came up to her and took her hand.
Without a second thought, he chose an elegant suit for himself and encouraged her, "Don't be afraid. Just pick what you like. I'll pay for it." "I don't even know where to start," she confessed with a shy smile. "There's so much here, and I've never worn such luxurious dresses." When Emma finally, with the help of a consultant, settled on a sea green dress, Matthew smiled. "Excellent choice. That color really brings out your eyes." "I think it's too beautiful for me," Emma said quietly. "Nonsense," he exclaimed. "Beauty can never be too much." The final stop was at a stylist's. Emma sat in a chair while several people worked their magic on her. Matthew beckoned to the receptionist and ordered a coffee. He sat in a chair, flipping through fashion magazines. At last, the work was done. Emma looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Instead of a timid and frightened maid, a confident and enchantingly beautiful young woman looked back at her. She couldn't tear her eyes away from her reflection, admiring her elegant hairstyle and delicate makeup. At that moment, she saw Matthew's reflection in the mirror behind her. He stood there in a sharp, perfectly tailored suit, and it took her breath away. He was incredibly handsome and elegant. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders and said softly, "You know, I'm nervous too, but when I looked at you, all my worries disappeared. You look incredible in that dress. Everything will be fine. We'll get through this together." As they pulled up to the mansion, Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She was suddenly terrified that the old butler would recognize her and everything would end in a terrible scandal. Her hands trembled as Mr. Henderson opened the door, bowing. She took a step towards her fate. The butler raised his head, and his gaze swept over Matthew, then settled on Emma. He looked at her, but there was no recognition in his eyes, only an impassive expression on his face. "Your name, madam?" he asked, bowing slightly to Emma. "Anne," Matthew answered before Emma could say a word. The butler turned to the hall and announced, in a loud, solemn voice, "Mr. Matthew Davenport and his charming companion, Miss Anne." Emma froze, unable to believe her ears. He hadn't recognized her. She was safe. A new wave of confidence washed over her. They approached Matthew's parents. His father beamed, his eyes literally shining with pride. He took Emma's hand and gallantly kissed it. "What a joy that you could make it after all, Anne. You are even more beautiful than I could have imagined." Then he hugged his son, whispering quietly, "I am proud of you." Matthew's mother, Mrs. Davenport, in an elegant silk dress, was more reserved. She took Emma's hands. The girl felt her palms tremble. Her mother looked intently into her face, as if trying to remember something. For a moment, Emma thought she had been recognized. But then Mrs. Davenport's face relaxed, and she smiled warmly. She leaned in to kiss Emma's cheek in greeting and whispered in her ear, "I'm watching you." Emma automatically touched her cheek to the other woman's, not knowing what to think. What did those words mean? A warning or a hint? The hall, illuminated by crystal chandeliers, buzzed with voices. Emma, accustomed to modesty and silence, felt out of place in this glittering world. The butler, weaving through the guests, began to glance in her direction more often, and Emma grew a little worried. But Matthew, captivated by her transformation, gave her no time for gloom. He introduced her to one aunt after another, then to uncles and cousins, proudly presenting her. "This is Anne, my diamond, my talisman. She is not only smart and beautiful, but also incredibly brave." Emma smiled, accepting the compliments, but felt the tension building. Matthew's mother's gaze seemed to be fixed on her. Once again, toasts were made in honor of the birthday girl. Her mother called Emma over, handed her a glass of champagne, and started a typical high society conversation. "My dear, Matthew told me that you are fond of painting. That's so wonderful. My husband was also once crazy about art." "I prefer to paint landscapes," Emma replied, trying to speak as calmly as possible. "Oh, landscapes! That's so poetic and, of course, very good for the soul. You love to read, don't you? Matthew says you're even planning to build a whole library." Emma nodded uncertainly. She realized that Matthew had weighed this up on the spot to present her in the best possible light. The mother, noticing her confusion, smiled gently. "I'm so glad my son has found such a refined young lady. He was always so flighty." Emma felt herself relax during the conversation, and she had almost forgotten her fear. But then the mother looked her straight in the eye, and her voice dropped. "Anne, you came here with my son. As a mother, I have to know, do you love him?" At that moment, Emma caught a glimpse of the old butler approaching the master of the house and whispering something in his ear for a long time, glancing her way. To her horror, Emma saw the expression on the head of the family's face change from shock to anger. The glass in his hand trembled. Pale, he walked towards her with an unsteady, faltering gait. At that second, Matthew approached them. He smiled, but then a look of bewilderment crossed his face. His approaching father pointed at him and hissed, "Shame! Shame! How dare you, Matthew!" Then he turned to Emma and, without holding back, said, "Imposter!" The guests turned around. A whisper ran through the hall, and all eyes were now fixed on them. A pale Matthew, his father who looked like he was about to have a stroke, his mother with a proud posture who stood somewhat aloof and watched the proceedings, and Emma whose face was gradually turning crimson with shame. "Dad, you have no right to insult my chosen one," Matthew began. But his father interrupted him. His voice trembled with anger. "What chosen one? Have you lost your mind, son? You've decided to marry a maid? We are the Davenports. Our family has a name." "She deserves respect," Matthew replied heatedly, stepping between his father and Emma. "Believe it or not, Dad, but I've gotten to know her enough to love her with all my heart. Just look at her, Dad. She doesn't even need diamonds to shine at this party. She herself is a real diamond." It was hard for his father not to agree, but he still said, "But she's from a simple background." At that moment, Matthew's mother joined the conversation. She went to her husband, took his arm, and with a gentle smile that concealed a mischievous twinkle said, "George, weren't you the one who married a street artist? Remember how you approached me in the park all those years ago? How I painted your portrait and how you looked at me with loving eyes? Have you forgotten? Well, remember, my husband." She turned to Emma. "I heard my son's words, but I haven't heard an answer to my question from you, my dear. So, what do you say?" Emma looked up. Matthew's gaze was fixed on her. He stood without breathing, and in his eyes she saw not just expectation, but real hope. Realizing that he was waiting for her answer, she felt her heart fill with warmth. Fear disappeared, giving way to courage.
I have also fallen in love with your son, she answered, her voice trembling. After Emma's words, the buzz died down. Matthew stood beside her. His face was pale, but he held her hand tightly. His father looked at them, confused. His lips moved, but he couldn't utter a word. The tension in the hall was palpable. And suddenly, his father broke into a wide smile. "Well, that's just wonderful," he exclaimed, his voice returning to him. "This is fantastic news." One of Matthew's aunts, wiping away a tear, whispered, "Oh, how familiar, how romantic." She suddenly sobbed and began to applaud, and soon the whole hall was filled with applause. Guests began to come up and congratulate Matthew and Emma, as well as his parents. When the celebration died down and the guests began to say their goodbyes and leave the mansion, the butler approached the master of the house, bowing low. "Sir, I have exposed the impostor. How do you wish to punish the maid for this indecent act? Shall I dismiss her?" Matthew's father, who had just begun to calm down, looked at him sternly. "Are you out of your mind, Henderson? What are you saying? Calling my son's fiancée a maid? I'll punish you myself if I ever hear you speak disrespectfully of my daughter-in-law again." The butler, trembling with fear, hastily backed away. His father suddenly laughed, turning to Emma and Matthew. "Don't be afraid, Emma, from this cantankerous old man. He won't do anything to you."
A couple of days later, Matthew gave Emma an exquisite ring with a cluster of diamonds that, as he said, didn't shine as brightly as her eyes. Emma showed it to her mother, who gasped and clutched her heart in surprise. And then Matthew came into the house to meet her family. A few weeks later, Matthew and Emma were able to pay for her mother's expensive treatment, and they hired a couple of professional tutors for her brother, and his school performance improved significantly. A year and a half later, he was accepted into a prestigious college. The Davenport family warmly welcomed Emma as their own daughter. Their love story became a lesson for many. True love can overcome any prejudice and change even the hardest of hearts.